Hey there everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, I Create with Color. My name is Kelli Needham and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I'm coming to you from snowy Brighton, Colorado right now. We are having a pretty decent storm and we have about 6 to 7 inches already, and I'm so excited because I love the snow. And I kind of have a fun project that kind of goes along with that, that wintry season that we're having right now, and it's this cute little frame that I put together to make at a team event that we had this weekend. We had our Kindred Inkers Christmas party and we all did a shoebox swap project, and this was the project that I made. So I'm going to show you how I made that, and then at the end I'll show you all the other cute projects that we made. In case you didn't know, a shoebox swap is where everybody brings a project already ready to go and you just get to go around and make everybody else's project. So it's a lot of fun. So let me bring in the supplies we're going to be needing for this project and let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need your cardstock, and this one is very simple. You're going to need 2 pieces, one Whisper White and one Crumb Cake, and both of those are cut at 5 by 7. You're also going to need 2 scraps, again Whisper White, or you can use Shimmery White, which I think is what I have here. You can see a little bit of shimmer to that, and a piece of green, or in my case I'm using Mossy Meadow. And all of my supplies are listed over here, but if you don't catch them, they'll be in the description at the end of the video. And stamp sets, we're going to be using this really fun Snow Front stamp set, which is in the holiday catalog, which ends the beginning of December, by the way. So if you're interested in something in there, you might want to check it out and get your orders in. But we're going to be using the mountains, the deer, a couple of these little trees, the cabin, this little set of trees with the hill, the pond, one of the pieces out of here. So this is actually one piece and I cut mine so that I could use just one part of it. And then we're going to use this little snow hill here. So we're going to be using a bunch of different stamps out of that. And then I'm also going to be using the Waterfront stamp set, which uses this, has this little piece in here that is supposed to kind of look like sand when you stamp it, but I'm going to be using it on the background of my crumb cake piece, and it's going to look more like snow. So kind of, these stamp sets are really nice because you can mix and match them. You can use them for lots of different things. So there's that. And then we're also going to be using the In the Woods dies. And we're going to be using this solid image right here, or solid die, which cuts out that solid green part of the tree. And then we're going to use this piece here that has all of these little branches that pop up from it, and that's the piece that I had cut out of white. So before we can get started on stamping, we have a couple of prep things we need to do. So what I've done is, you're also going to need a frame that has a 5 by 7 inch opening, and I have taken mine apart. So I've discarded that little paper piece that comes inside, and I've taken the glass in the back off of it. And the reason that I did this is you're going to want to do some marking on your crumb cake piece before you can die cut anything. So what I've done is I've taken my crumb cake piece of cardstock and I've set it inside of my frame, and then I'm also going to put the piece of glass back in there. And the only reason I'm doing this is to create a little bit of stability on here, because I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to lightly trace the opening of my frame. And what that's going to do is tell me exactly where I can start cutting out with my dies, so that I don't end up cutting off part of the tree on the side. So once you have that line on there, you can take your frame and put it aside, because we won't need it again until later. Alright, so now that I have the line around the outside, that's where I know my dies are going to be placed. So I'm going to bring in my Big Shot and also that tree frame, or tree die. And I'm going to bring this right in here, and I'm going to show you guys how I made that cutout for my trees. So in my frame, I have this crumb cake piece. This piece is actually in front of the white, which is really hard to tell because there's not a lot of dimension to it. And I tried to pop it up with dimensionals, but then it didn't fit in the frame. So that's why it is still flat. But it does give you this cutout opening here with the trees, and then all the stamping is done behind that. So let's get started. I'm going to start over here on the right side of my paper, making sure that I stay inside of that line, and I'm going to die cut this one tree right out of there. So run that through. I always like to go forward and backward. So now what I have is I have one tree cut out of my piece of crumb cake cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to remove that tree, and now I'm going to place my die back on here a second time. And what I want to do is I want to overlap the first tree so that we're going to end up with one continuous cutout when we're all done. So I'm going to die cut the second one. And then you're going to take that and you're going to pop that piece out as well. So you can see our tree opening is starting to form. Now I'm going to do the third one. I'm going to place this here, and I'm kind of lining up the bottom too so that it kind of makes it more of one solid ground instead of my trees just going up across the paper. So put that on there like that, and there is no perfect way to do this where every time you do it they're going to come out the same. So just know that if you're going to make multiple of these, they are pretty quick and easy, but I'm going to show you an important step when we get done with this that's going to make a difference if you're going to do multiple frames like this. All right, so now that I have all of my trees cut out, we are done with the die cutting part of this piece. The other thing that you are going to want to do, and since I have the big shot out here, I'm going to go ahead and do this, is you're going to want to cut your trees. Okay, and so that's where that piece of Mossy Meadow and Whisper White come in. So I'm going to place both of those on there. I'm going to use my tree frame, the solid one here, and I'm going to cut it out on Mossy Meadow, and then with my piece of Whisper White or Shimmery White, I'm going to cut out that other tree real quick. Might as well get it all done while we're here. All right, so now I have my solid tree image. And I also have that cut out, the white cut out accent piece that has all these little pieces that lift up on there. So now I'm going to get the big shot out of the way. And we are ready to start working on the second part of our project. Actually, let's finish this part up first. I forgot a couple of things. So what I want to do with this piece is, if you want to make it stand out a little bit more than it would otherwise, I have taken our soft suede ink, which we're going to be using here in a minute for some of the other stamping, and I've taken a sponge dauber, and I'm going to ink up my sponge dauber, and then I'm going to go around the opening of this tree with my sponge dauber, and I'm just brushing that ink right on there. And what that's going to do is make that opening pop out and make it look like it's more dimensional over the top of our stamped piece. So real quick, I'll just ink that up all the way around. Now I did try on my first one inking up around the edge, and it didn't really show up very well when I put it in the frame, so I didn't even worry about that step for the video today. It just didn't seem like it made much of a difference. But you guys can try whatever you want, obviously, on your projects. And this gets a little tricky. You want to make sure you get in all those little creases and cracks, but you don't want to bend them up a whole lot, so just be very careful when you're going around that edge. And this is kind of fun because it kind of gives almost a wood burned look to that outside edge of those trees. And my original idea came from some artwork that I had seen at a craft fair, where they had taken a piece of wood and cut out an image similar to this, and you know, when it cut out, it had got burned around the edges, and then they had a painting behind it. So that's part of where my idea for this came from. Now the last step for this piece is I want to add some texture to this background piece. So I'm going to use my Versamark ink, and then that stamp that I told you guys looked like sand or snow, and it really works great for this because it just kind of adds a little bit of a texture to the background. And as you can see, I'm not being too particular. I'm just going through making sure that I kind of get it everywhere. Sorry, my Versamark is really sticky, so it keeps sticking to my stamp and jumping around. All right, just about there. Maybe one more. Okay, now that I have my stamping done on that, we are finished with this piece for right now. Lift that up so you can kind of see that texture on there. Just add something extra that makes it kind of fun. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in my Whisper White piece, and now we start the fun part of this. Now, where do you put all of your stamps? That's a good question. So I'm going to take this piece now that I'm done with it, and I'm going to very lightly trace, and I mean really lightly trace. You guys want to be able to tell where the bottom of this is, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to be able to erase the lines later. And then down the sides, I'm just kind of marking where those little edges of that tree are so that I know how big of an area here I have to work with. And you want to make sure that all of your stamps are inside of this where this little window is going to be. Otherwise, you end up cutting off parts and pieces of it. So once I get this done tracing it, and like I said, you don't have to trace the whole entire image. You just want an idea of where everything is going to fit inside of that opening right there. And just in case you can't see it. Okay, so there's our opening. We're going to make sure all of our stamps fit inside that opening. Now, it took me several tries to figure out, okay, what's the best place to start so that I get all the placement of my pieces where I want them to be. So what I ended up doing is I'm going to start with our Balmy Blue Classic pad, and I'm going to start with the little pond stamp. So that's this one that kind of looks like a little oval shape, and I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to come down here in this bottom little corner of where the trees are, and I want to come down just a little bit below that line so that it looks like that pond is peeking out of those trees, and I'm going to stamp that. Okay, and that's it for that piece. And I know that a lot of people tend to start at the bottom, work their way up, start at the top, work their way down. But I'm going to tell you there is kind of a reason why I did these, and it's because you can make sure you can get everything to fit in there where you want it. So you might try to follow the same order and see how yours comes out. So next I'm going to take Highland Heather. And for this one, we're going to be using the one that looks like the mountains. And I don't want my mountains to be super dark. So I'm going to ink up my stamp really good, and then I'm going to stamp off on my scrap paper before I stamp my mountains onto my Whisper White. See, and then you get that stamped off a little bit lighter of a image, and I'm going to do that 3 times, and I'm just overlapping these each time. And I know it's going to kind of look like a mess when we get done, but trust me, it will still look really good when you have it all put together. Okay, so I have my mountains. They're stamped kind of across the top of the trees here. You want to leave just a little bit of those peaks without anything behind them so that you can tell that you have that solid tree shape. All right, so our mountains are done. Next, I'm going to bring in my Mossy Meadow, and I'm going to have 3 stamps for this one. So this one is that little tree with the hills, little group of trees, and then I have the 2 smaller of the pine trees that come in the stamp set. I'm going to stamp first my little trees with the hill, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with my mountain. I'm going to ink up my stamp really well, but this Mossy Meadow is a very dark green, so I want to make sure I stamp that off before I add my trees. Now I want to add my trees right along in here, and I'm only going to stamp these twice. So I'm going to come over here and stamp this one first, right in front of the mountains. Okay, and then I'm going to do that the second time. Make sure you ink it up really well and stamp off. And then I'm going to move these over to the other side, and I just want to get in there a little bit of these trees. So I'm going to stamp that right there. Okay, now keep in mind there is no perfect placement for these. It's just where you think it looks good. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same Mossy Meadow that I just put away, and I'm going to take my trees and I'm going to ink them up, and I'm going to kind of stamp them over the top of the little hill of trees just to give some depth and dimension by adding that darker color. So I'm stamping this straight Mossy Meadow ink on this one, and I'm just going to add some of those trees in there, and I think I'm going to add another little one right here. Okay, so that gives some dimension since we have those lights and darks, and it just adds a little bit of interest. All right, so Mossy Meadow, done. Next, I'm going to bring in the Early Espresso ink pad. And with this one, we're going to be using the little cabin stamp. Okay, so I'm going to ink that up full strength. And I'm going to stamp my little cabin right here in that little opening that I made in my trees right there. So there's my cabin. And that's it for the Early Espresso. So the next color we're going to be using is soft suede. With that, we're going to be using the little deer stamp. And this is where that stamp comes in that I told you I cut apart. And I want to show you really quick what I mean. So this stamp right here was all one image, these set of trees here. And all I did was take my paper snips, and as you can see, that's the other half of that tree right there. So I just cut my trees apart right down the middle so that I could use this little set of trees and didn't have to use the whole entire image. And you can do that with your stamps. It is perfectly okay to cut things apart if you know you want to use them for something else. Because when I line these back up on my block, they're going to look exactly like they're supposed to with the full set of trees. And they'll stamp perfectly fine as long as they're stuck to that block. So I'm going to ink up my tree with full strength ink. And I'm going to stamp it down here kind of in this little area where there isn't a whole lot of stuff going on. And I'm going to stamp it once. And then I'm going to come in and without re-inking anything, I'm going to stamp it a second time. And it's going to kind of look like those go behind my cabin. Now, if I wanted to, I could come in and stamp a third set of trees, which if you notice on my sample, there was another set of trees here. But since I don't have quite enough room, I'm going to re-ink my stamp. And I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to stamp a set of trees kind of off to the side over here. Just to give a little bit more interest on that side. And then I'm going to come in with my little deer. And I want to stamp them kind of down here by the pond because I think they look cute right there. All right, so that is it for our soft suede. And now the last color that we have to stamp, I'm actually using, if I knew where I put it, I'm going to actually use the Cherry Cobbler ink pad. And I didn't use the ink pad at our meeting because it's super, super juicy. I ended up using a Stampin' Spot, but you can use whatever you have. So I'm going to be stamping these really cute little birds right here. And I want to stamp these in my little meadow here. I originally tried stamping them in the trees, and though they were cute, they kind of got lost. So I found that stamping them down here on the snow turned out a little bit better because you could see them. All right, and last but not least, I still have that little, kind of looks like ground, this little piece right here. And I want to bring that back in with my Balmy Blue and add a little bit of dimension to this. So I'm going to ink this up, but then I'm also going to stamp it off so that I don't have a full strength image. What I end up having is this little area right here that kind of looks like a shadow under the trees, or it looks like snow. So I'm going to do that a couple of times. I'm going to come in underneath these trees, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow and snow under there, and then I have this one here. Kind of just adds that interest to our scene here. All right, now that we have all of that done, I'm going to bring my Cherry Cobbler and the two little birds back in. And I'm also going to bring in that tree, our little white tree that we die cut earlier. And I'm going to stamp a couple of little birds directly on this tree. And you kind of want to make sure you have a big enough opening to stamp these. So I'm going to stamp my little cardinal right here. And I'm not sure that this little bird was supposed to be red, but I'm making him red anyway. And I'm going to stamp that one right up there in that little space so that it looks like we have some cute little birds in that tree. All right, that is literally all of the stamping that we need to do for this project. So putting it together is super, super simple. Get some of these blocks out of the way here. So I'm going to bring my crumb cake piece back in. And I'm going to bring my Whisper White piece back in. And the first thing that I want to do before I glue these together is I want to erase my lines. So I'm just going to take this. I have these high polymer erasers. They're white and they don't They don't tend to smear like, say, maybe a regular pencil eraser, so I really like to use them because they don't leave any kind of marks on my project. So real quick, I'm going to erase these lines. And then I'm going to do the same thing on my Whisper White piece. Now, you want to be careful when you do your Whisper White piece that all of your inks have had a chance to dry. Otherwise, you may end up with smudges on the white part where you don't want it. And mainly, I'm focusing on the part where it's still in the white area and not so much on the part that has been stamped over. A lot of that, you can't see those lines anyway. So you really don't have to worry about erasing over the top of them. The Highland Heather is a little bit of a lighter color, so you want to make sure you get that out of there. And then the blue also, since it's a little bit lighter of a color, you want to erase that as well. And as you can see, it doesn't take very long, pretty simple step. Now I did kind of smear my brown there just a little bit. I think it'll still be okay. I don't think it'll show up that much. You can try to erase those lines. They don't always come off of there. All right, so there we go. That's as simple as that. Now what we're going to do is just apply our adhesive to the back of our crumb cake piece. And I'm just going to be using my liquid Tombow Mono multi-purpose, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be using this to glue my pieces together. So I'm just going to apply that all the way around the outside edge, making sure that I get good coverage. You don't want too much because you don't want it to bleed out of your back in, like into the opening. So be careful not to apply too much on there. Make sure you do get inside of all of these little areas that you want to stick down and right around the edge of that tree. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to line these up, and the nice part about this is because they are 5 by 7 and they are the same size, you can line them up pretty easily. Just like that. Kind of move it around, make sure it's lined up, and then you can stick all of that down. I like to make sure that everything's lined up on the front first, and then turn it over, and then you can really rub that down to make sure everything stays put where you want it to go. All right, that part is done. Now, since we do have the tree that's going to be stuck on the front of this, which is 3D, you have two options. You can take this frame and put this in here first and leave it just like this, and then I would put the glass piece in behind it and then put the backing of the frame on so that it will still stand up. So you can do it that way, or if you prefer to have that protected, you can put the glass piece back in. You can put your piece of your artwork piece in behind there, and you can stamp or stick that tree right on the top of here. Now, I don't prefer to do that because I just don't, I think it looks kind of funny, but that's personal preference. It's entirely up to you. So what I've done is I've just taken this and put it on top of the glass and put everything back into the frame. Let's see if I can get it back in there with these little tabs. All right, so now that I have everything back in there, I'm going to put my backing piece on. Make sure that you put it on right side up the first time. So now my frame is completely ready to go. It's all put back together. I can fold the little tabs back over and we are good to go there. All right, now that I have everything back inside of my frame, I want to put my little tree together. And it's really simple to do. What you want to do is you want to make all these little pieces pop up. So what I like to do is curl them this way with my finger or a bone folder. And what that does is that starts to curl up your piece. And what you're really wanting to do is curl each one of those little sets of leaves, sets of branches, or whatever you want to call them. You're really wanting to curl those out. So I'm just taking my bone folder and my thumb and just kind of rolling that over so that I get, and then when I straighten this back out, you'll see all those little pieces, they pop up and they become 3D. Okay, so that's what you want. You can always come back and curl them a little bit more if you have to after you've got them popped out on the front, and just really make them stand out. So those are going to be our little snowy accents on our tree. See if I can't get that top one to curl a little bit more. Okay, now that I have all of that done, I'm just going to take my liquid glue again, and I'm going to put a little bit on the back. Now you want to make sure that you do not put glue on all those little things that have popped up. You just want to put it in the little flat spaces now, kind of on the edges, in those little openings where you don't have a little flap sticking up. Down across the bottom. Okay, and now the easiest way to put this together on this tree is I line up the point at the top right here. They are meant to fit together right at the top. They line up perfectly right there. And then I move it down at the bottom where I think it looks good, where there's about the same amount of green on both sides, and I just stick it down. And as you can see, you can come back and pop up your little white pieces after the fact. And then I want to put a couple of dimensionals on the back of this. So I'm going to put one up here at the top, and you can put on as many as you want, wherever you want to put them to make that tree stand up. So I have some extra little pieces. I like to use the edges of my dimensionals too, that way you don't waste anything. Peel off the backings of those and place your tree on the front where you want it to go. And then as you can see, my pieces are kind of flattened there, so I'm just going to take some tweezers or a little X-Acto knife or whatever you have that you can use to kind of help pop those back up. Sometimes they get stuck in there like this one and they don't want to come out. But you can just kind of pull them back up and resituate them where you want them to go. And voila, our frame is complete. So I really hope you enjoyed my project. I hope you guys will give it a try. Just remember, you don't always have to have the exact same stamps and things that I have. You can try this with anything that you have at home. And it does make just a really cute, simple little gift that you can give to, say, your neighbors, or, you know, somebody who really likes the mountains or the deer. Just try to think outside the box and use stuff that you have. You could very easily use that Waterfront stamp set and do something similar to it. You know, if you had some palm trees, you could die cut and do the scene behind that. That would turn out really well also. So real quick, I want to share with you the other projects that we got at the class. Some of them, all of them are absolutely adorable. I love them all. One of our fellow demonstrators, Janet Weisheidt, made this adorable and very, very elegant Cheers to the New Year card. And so we stamped this and then added a little bit of the shimmery crystal effects over the top of it, which happens to be one of Janet's favorite products is the crystal effects. So she used that on her card, and then on the inside I stamped a couple of glasses, and I also stamped my envelope to match, which has these cute little glasses on the front as well. So I'll be able to send that out to somebody for the new year. And this back piece is our it's acetate that is in the holiday catalog, and I cannot think of the name of it off the top of my head. Mercury glass acetate, and it is absolutely beautiful. It has like a silver design behind it, but it's shiny on the top. It's just absolutely beautiful. So that was one of the projects. Another project from another talented demonstrator named Kathy House is this really cute birthday card, and this uses the a new product that is going to be coming out here real soon. In January, they got to go to an onstage event and got to use some new products and be able to do a pre-order. So this is called Poppy, I think is what it's called. I don't know the exact name of the paper because I don't have it yet, and I don't have the catalog to be able to look it up. But this was a really pretty card that we made, real simple. Just has a cute little die cut here, and then I stamped the we stamped the words and the leaves on the inside to make it match. So really fun. Look forward to seeing some awesome products from the new Occasions catalog coming out in January. I cannot wait to pre-order so I can show you guys some more fun stuff. but that's that one. And then this one is from one of our demonstrators. And Mary, I apologize if I mess up your last name, but Mary McCannon. And she made this card, and it's just so simple but so much fun. We stamped off the big roses with yellow and then sponged around the outside with a sponge dauber and the lovely lipstick to get that two-tone color. And then we did a little bit of masking. We masked off this flower and stamped all the other parts and pieces around it. So it was just really fun and a technique that I haven't used in a really long time. And then on the inside we added some flowers, and I also added some flowers to my envelope as well, so that because I always like to match my stuff. So that we did that project. And then we made a very cute little ornament, once I figure out where it went, from Linda Bettinger, and some of you have probably seen her videos on YouTube. She is amazing. She also made the 79th global demonstrator, made 79th on the 100 global demonstrator list, so I'm so very proud of her. She's just doing amazing with her business. But she made this cute little ornament for us, and we put them together. So we stamped the Christmas tree in the new embossing powder that has the silver glitter mixed in with it, and I can't think of exactly the name of it right now, but we stamped that on both pieces, and then we put the ornament together with the cute little snowflake shaker stuff inside and some glimmer paper on the outside. So that was a lot of fun. And then last but not least, my upline Terry Casberry had us make these cute little tea towels where we used a stencil and some fabric paint, and you basically just lay your stencil down and you daub your fabric paint on there where you want it to go, and it made this super cute dish towel that we can use. And I absolutely love all of the projects. So a really fun thing about Stampin' Up! Is making friends and building relationships with other demonstrators, customers, and whatnot. So I encourage you, if you have any questions, to contact me about becoming a demonstrator. And if you like the project that I made today and are interested in ordering any of those products, you can go to my website, creationcorner.stampinup.net, to place an order. And I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving or whatever holiday that you celebrate, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you.